Expectations are unbelievably important. You find what you're looking for. So there's 7 different genres in Scripture. We are going to look at 6 of them. We're not going to dive into the book of Revelation and try and take on the genre of apocalypse, even though I love that stuff and spent a lot of my focus studies in that area. But that is the first of the 7 genres, what we call the apocalypse. And apocalypse is a type of literature, apocalypse. We actually have many apocalypses from the second century BC, 1st century BC, 1st century AD, 2nd century AD, all around the time of Christ, years before, years after. We have, there's the apocalypse of Ezra, there's the apocalypse of Abraham. These are all real books. The apocalypse of Isaiah, the apocalypse of Baruch, which was the prophet Jeremiah's scribe. Now, we don't think that any of those apocalypses were actually written down by any of those characters, because it was commonplace. If you wanted to get your book known, you'd write your book. In this case, you'd write this, apocalyptic vision of who's evil and who's good, and who's oppressed and who's powerful, and how God's going to step in and boom, judge the bad guys, and us, of course, the good guys, we're going to win. This is what apocalypses were. But if you wanted someone to read that book, and you're just kind of a nobody or kind of a fringe group or kind of a sketchy David Koresh type, and you're trying to get in the mainstream publication world, well, the way you do it is you slap someone's name on it that's really important and well-respected. So that's why we had all these, the apocalypse of Ezra and the apocalypse of Abraham, because, okay, we know those guys. And so that is actually a genre. There isn't, so actually the thing that helps us when reading and interpreting the book like Revelation is understanding that the imagery and expressions, the analogies and symbols, these were being used in many other books. It was a way of communicating, okay? This kind of, here's the vision I saw, and here's the imagery in that vision. Other people were writing those down, and so we can go elsewhere and look at, okay, how were people using symbolic numbers and symbolic beasts and all of this stuff. So that's as much as I'll put on the table for you, just to let you know. We do have a lot more that helps us understand what the language means in a book like Revelation. There's other apocalyptic imagery, even in some of the judgment sayings of Jesus, as well as in Old Testament prophecies like Zechariah and such, the book of Daniel. So we have that same genre with the same type of symbolism within visions. Tell me, though, what are the remaining 6 genres? Let's see if we can get them all down here. Okay, so we got narrative and poetry. That's good. It makes sense that we start there because those would be the 2 largest in terms of percentage of the Bible that's made up by these. The tricky thing about poetry is there's a lot of even prophecy and narratives that have poetry parts to them or structures in them. And so narrative makes up about 1/3 of the whole Bible, and poetry actually also makes up about 1/3 of the whole Bible. So if you're going to really understand how to interpret a specific genre, those 2 are fairly important to start with. What else? What was that? Wisdom. Right. So the wisdom genre. All right, we got 3 out of the 6. Law. Absolutely. Prophecy. So we got narrative, poetry, wisdom, law, prophecy. 1 left. What's that? So the answer has been given down here. Let's just say that the last genre is epistles. You'll see it in your notes there as epistolary. I put that word in there, yeah, just to try and, again, make sure that you're getting your money's worth here. I know if it just said letters, you'd be like, well, that's not impressive. Step up your game. And so I put epistolary. So yeah, there's the epistles that we find all throughout the New Testament. So those really make up the 7 major genres of Scripture. Now you have a number of other kind of what you might call subgenres, things like parables and some other stuff. But let's stick with those 7, and we're really going to focus on 6 of them, because if we get some characteristics for how to approach 6 of the 7, you'll have a really good grasp on some specific issues, unique issues to look for in most all of the Bible that you'll go forward and study. So why does it matter? Right? Is this, for some of you might be asking, okay, seriously, I'm going to learn how to, the particularities of the genre of poetry? I'm an engineer. I hate poetry. Maybe you're going how to take into consideration, how the genre of epistles works. This just seems like we're traveling off into like an English major that's still trying to find a place to share his or her ideas. The reason why it's important is this, and that's why I asked the question in your notes. It's important because of expectations. And I've said before, and I'll say it again right now, you find what you're looking for. So expectations are unbelievably important. I mean, if you guys have had any kind of, close and consistent relationship over multiple years, you understand how important expectations are. What I think you should do, what I think you will do, and that stuff is critical. And it's no different when reading the Bible. Again, what I expect to find is going to affect what I actually find. We're not going to talk much about apocalypses, but that's just as true there. If you open up the book of Revelation and before reading anything, before doing what I told you to do, start at the beginning, read to the end, get a sense of the kind of the purpose and kind of how the whole book unfolds. If you just open it up and say, okay, let me figure out what on CNN News or what in my morning newspaper or is going on today that the book of Revelation is describing in its imagery, and then you start reading for that, well, you're going to start making connections whether you should or not. Okay? And people do that all the time. Right? So kind of how you set out and what you are looking for, you're going to be like, oh yeah, these locust figures described here in the book of Revelation, yeah, I think that's the 2 million man Chinese army, and this thing that came out of the pit is probably a nuclear missile flying up, and it's kind of like, whoa. So you're just finding what you wanted to find, And if the genre apocalypse actually is, well, the symbolism was all rooted in first century realities that both, that the original audience could understand in all those cities we've been looking at on the map. Well, then wait a minute. My question should be different. I should be looking for how this imagery is rooted in and connected to what's going on in Israel and among the Jews and among early Christians and in the Roman Empire. So what you expect to find is unbelievably important.